Welcome to Feminine Roadmap Podcast. I'm your host, Gina Farrar. Each week, I bring you an inspiring conversation to help you navigate the challenges and changes of midlife so that you can not only survive, but thrive in your second half. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. It is Gina here, and today we have a really hot topic. Today we're going to be talking about emotional eating and emotional brain training. We are going to come up with solutions and solid science to help us overcome this long time challenge, set the record straight. And my guest in helping us set the record straight is Dr. Laurel Mellin. She is a health psychologist. She's a professor of medicine at UC San Francisco, and she's the founder of Emotional Brain Training. Among other things, this woman is a scientist, and she's going to bring some clarity to a much confusing topic. Things that we believe we know, but we actually are fighting against ourselves. So today, I want to invite Dr. Laurel to my show, and I want to thank you for saying yes to me, Dr. Laurel.
Well, Gina, I love your show, and I'm so happy to be part of all the people that you bring information to and helping everyone, because you know what? We need you.
Thank you.
And you know what makes me really happy is this particular topic, which is on stress eating or emotional overeating. Remember, stress and emotions are the same thing.
So what is it that got you excited and passionate about this? Like, why does Dr. Laurel want to talk about emotional and stress eating? What brought you to this?
I want to talk to you about it because there's a deep part of me that has been hurt, that has been following things that don't work for me, that makes me feel unworthy and powerless and like there's something really wrong with me. And a big part of that for women is food and weight. And it turns out that the party line that essentially if we just knew what to do, if we analyzed ourselves enough, if we were positive in our thoughts, and if we just would use enough apps to write down our food, that we'd solve our problem. Unfortunately, all of those strategies that everyone believes in, and they're not really bad. It's just that they're all based on the thinking brain. And the thinking brain is powerless against the force of what really matters, which is the emotional brain. If you just shift it down, instead of thinking you're about the top of your brain, the bottom of your brain, all of a sudden it makes perfect sense why you'd overeat, and you know how to stop. Not only just stop by depriving yourselves, but to stop wanting the food and to dig deeper inside so that you meet your actual needs. When you meet your actual needs in your emotional brain, you have freedom and joy, and that's worth talking about.
Now, your journey of getting to this, you are the founder of Emotional Brain Training. What led you to develop that system?
I was part of a federal grant, a national grant, trying to figure out how to go to the root cause of really difficult problems. And I was working on child obesity, and it just wasn't working. I was using just the same thing they use now. Diets, cognitive, behavioral, mindful, being aware, all of this. It all seemed like it should work, but it wasn't. And I was working with kids, and I am a mother now. I have 3 children at this point, and I was seeing these little kids fighting this overeating problem, being put on diets. And I said, stop, we've got to do something different. And you know, there is something to science. And what I did is I said, I'm going to scour the literature and find out a clue of what is the root cause of this overeating in these kids. Remember, whatever it is in kids, it's in adults, because the brains are the same. The brain you don't do a real change in the brain after childhood. Most of the brain stays the same. And so I went back in the literature in the bottom of the basement of UCSF, and I found this study from 1940 by this psychiatrist at Baylor College of Medicine named Hilda Brooke. And she had said, I did all this study of the family frame and childhood obesity, and it's about connection. There's some kind of a misconnection that essentially this child is not getting that emotional connection that they need. And this is essentially, we don't know what to do about it. And I thought, I'm going to figure it out. So I taught the tools of emotional connection at UCSF in the clinic to families. And this one child came back and said, you know, I'm just not overeating anymore. And her mother says, what did you do to my child? All we did was use emotional tools, and now she doesn't want the food. She wants to go out and play, and she's happy. And I said to myself, we don't have the brain science to know why that was, but I'm going to dedicate my career for the next 40 years to finding out. And we found out exactly 10 years ago that for the last 10 years, we've known what that root cause is. And so I wrote this book, The Stress Eating Solution, because I want everyone to be able to grab hold of these tools and stop all this thinking and dieting and analyzing and move just a little lower to the emotional brain. And when we do that, you know what happens? We have amazing powers that we never even imagined when we were thinking instead of feeling.
It's really interesting because what I've learned I'm a coach for women. I help women transform their thinking, their mindset, because once we get a handle on the brain and the stories we tell ourselves, the things we believe, that's when the shift can happen.
Yeah.
And so it's so powerful. But what's exciting about what you do is I'm doing it from what I know from my experience in coaching women and helping them transition. But you're actually bringing the science to bear, because the childhood beliefs, what was poured into our minds, we know before a certain age, we don't have that ability to say, this is true, that's not true. We're like an open vessel, just taking in what we're told.
Well, can I give you a little thumbnail sketch of the science?
Yes, I would absolutely love that.
Okay, so take a nice deep breath, and here you have your unconscious mind. And then you have this little tiny prefrontal cortex up here that's trying to manage all of these emotions, okay? And what happens is we've been intimidated by psychiatrists and psychologists. It's not a bad thing, but essentially they say, gosh, this unconscious mind is probably owned by a psychiatrist or psychologist, not by you. And also it's so incredibly complicated. Well, it is if you think about it as psychological. But if you think about it as biological, it's so simple. There are essentially all of what you do is not controlled by your thinking brain, but by the circuits in your emotional brain that respond to what you do. For example, I'm here in Midland, Texas. I'm at my son and daughter-in-law's house. They have a brand new baby that's 6 months old. And so I am in a completely different environment. I don't have my dog. I don't have my partner. I'm here. And what's happening in my brain is my brain's trying to find other similar times when I've been in a similar situation. And it automatically activates the circuit and tells me how to feel, what to expect, and what to do. So there's this circuitry in our brain that's at the foundation of how we respond to life unconsciously. And most of what we do replays of unconscious experiences. Are you with me?
Yes,
okay.
I am.
So it's the circuits. If you can control the circuits, which we just found that out 10 years ago, you can control your automatic responses to life and your drives for love, safety, comfort, pleasure, and purpose. You can control them. Okay? Yes. So essentially, this brain is so simple when you think of it as these are wires in your brain. This brain is elegant and smart, and it's also really stupid. And the reason it's stupid is it records everything without your conscious control. And if it records a cross wire and tells you that you need food for love or food for safety or food for the only way you're going to possibly get comfort in life, and once it's encoded there, it holds on to that circuit, and with even a little tiny bit of stress, it activates it. The chemicals of stress start flowing. Before you know it, you're at the refrigerator and you're overeating because the stress from these circuits takes the thinking brain offline. So it doesn't matter what you think, you're not going to do it. You're just going to obey whatever this circuit tells you to do. Okay? For example, when I was 11, I came home from school. I had just been two bad things. I'd been taunted by another girl at school. And secondly, I had tried to be elected vice president of my class, and I only got 2 votes. Now, 2 votes, and one of them was mine. And the principal secretary posted the number of votes right on the bulletin board so everyone could see I only had 2 votes. This is not a happy time, okay? I come home from school. I was feeling really, really bad about myself. I was feeling unworthy and unloved. And my mother was in the back bedroom, but I didn't know how to talk to her about it. And so I saw cinnamon rolls on the counter, one of those big containers with the white frosting, all that. And I ate 3 of them like that. And then I didn't think much of it, but in that moment, this is really, really important. In that moment, I had activated a fight or flight response. I just absolutely had to have love, or I had to have safety. So you've got this huge circuit that's a fight or flight circuit activated in my brain. And then I pick up a food. I had food was just food to me back then, little did I know. I reached for the food, and the fight or flight circuit, wanting at that point love is what I wanted, combines with the food circuit, and now the food circuit becomes a fight or flight drive. And that night, that one occasion goes back down into your unconscious mind. You have no idea it's there. And so you can go about saying, well, I really should eat this. And if I just ate a little bit less, and I need more broccoli and whatever, as if it's really just in this brain. Then the moment I get stressed again, that circuit comes back with the vengeance. It creates all these chemicals in my body that make me have to have that food, and I eat. And that's how you overeat. The circuit tells you to do it. It's not your fault. It's not because you have bad habits. The brain tells you stories. Oh, I just have bad habits. Well, I don't have enough willpower. Well, you can interpret it that way, but on a biological level, thank goodness, it's a circuit, and these circuits you can shut off and you can rewire with emotional tools.
So how do we become aware, first of all, that this is happening? Because the thing about food is you have to eat, right?
Yeah,
food is a necessary part of life. That's what makes it sticky, I think, is because food is food. You die without it. So how do you develop that healthy relationship with food? How do you become aware? Some people might be aware that they are emotional eating, but how do we navigate that? If we know that we're emotionally eating, or we're kind of aware that that's happening, what are the steps that we begin to take?
Gina, I think you hit on something, because most people don't know that they're emotionally overeating. And I want to clarify one thing. The first thing that you do is you appreciate that there's 3 different kinds of moods that you can get into when you eat that are all stress eating.
Oh.
Okay. So if you're stressed, everyone has a different stress style. And so they can just take a moment and say, when I'm really stressed and I go for food, I can be in one of 3 different mood states. One is a false high. You're separated from reality. You just say, well, I just like food, or I deserve to have this food. Meanwhile, you have diabetes and you feel hungover after you eat. It's a false high. That's stress. The other is numb, that essentially you shut off all emotions. You can't know whether you're hungry or not. If you're numb, because you can't have any sensations from your body. You don't get those sensations correctly. Or thirdly, you could go to a low, which is what I did. I got depressed or anxious, and that triggered me. Typically, people who get depressed or anxious, they have that emotional style, call themselves emotional eaters, and they think it's psychological. It's not psychological, it's biological. That circuit, it's like a chain in your brain from some miscellaneous experience, typically early in life or later on, is activated, but they really do think it's a psychological problem, and they know that there's something else going on besides just, habitual overeating. The other people that go numb really can go through a lot of food when you're numb, okay, because you don't get those signals to stop. And they don't know that they are stress eaters, nor do people that go to a false high. So you really need to assume that if you're eating when you're not really hungry, or that you lose weight and then gain it back, that's stress eating. One other issue is that it is complicated a little bit by the fact that when you're stressed, there's something in your brain called a stress eating triangle. There's 3 different brain centers that collaborate to make you crave sugar and fat, to make you store whatever food you eat, to make you lethargic so that you don't want to get up off the couch, and make you depressed. Okay, this is called the Bermuda Triangle. Once you get inside, you can't get out. So let's say that you're stressed. Well, essentially that circuit I'm telling you about is stored in the amygdala, or the stress center. It gets activated. It knocks on the door of the reward center and says, we're not going to have healthy rewards now. It's just not going to do it for us. We need sugary, fatty foods. Nothing else is going to work. And then essentially the appetite center says, I want to eat and eat and eat. And whatever I do eat, I'm going to store as fat. Okay, so this is chemical. So essentially these centers in stress create a chemical nightmare that makes us so hungry that we're beyond hungry, we're starving. And even little bits of extra food tend to go to fat. And so essentially the wire triggers biochemicals, that triggers overeating and weight gain. And we just say, come on, it's all in the emotional brain. It's all here. And you can't control the chemicals or the overeating. It's just too complicated. Instead, you say, the problem is I've got this circuit in my brain, this kind of glitch here that's telling me to overeat, and I'm going to do something about that glitch. And that's how I'm going to get my power back, and that's how it's going to be easy to eat healthy, lose weight, and keep it off. It's the only avenue I know of that can do that. Go to the root cause, go to that circuit without judgment, and shut it off.
So the misfiring circuit or the miswired circuit.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's a faulty association between a fundamental need, and the fundamental needs are safety, love, comfort, and pleasure. Now, food's pleasurable. It just is. But if the brain tells you it's the only way, overeating just the unhealthy foods on a day-by-day basis is the only way you're going to get pleasure, that's what you're going to go to. If it tells you that's how you get love or safety, you're going to say, I'm not really conscious of it. It's in my unconscious mind. So the first step is to find out what that circuit is telling you. And you can do that in 2 or 3 minutes if you use emotional tools. And that's what we do in this method, EBT, the stress eating solution. You first start by saying, what's the root cause? What's that faulty message in my circuit? Now, the reason it's emotional is this. If you said, I'm going to go and analyze myself and say, I overeat and eat because I learned that food is love in childhood, that plus 5 cents gives you a nickel. Because when you have it on a thinking level, you're in low stress. And the circuit only changes when you're highly emotional. Okay, these emotional circuits only change when they're being activated. So when they're activated, if you stay present, 2 things. Stay present to the emotion, which requires a simple emotional tool.
Okay.
And then secondly, change the message. The craving in the moment will shut off. You do that repeatedly, and the brain trains itself to stop getting safety or love or comfort from, that extra bit of comfort from food. And it starts really helping you meet your true needs. And food is just food. You can enjoy it, but it doesn't control you anymore.
And this pattern, because really it's emotions that got us there.
Yes.
It's emotions that get us out.
I think that's a great way to say it. In that moment that I had stress, remember, stress activates emotional extremes where you're high, low, or numb. And at that point I was low. I didn't know how to process my emotions. So the solution is, if we didn't know how to process our intense negative, everyone can process their emotions when the thinking brain's in charge. How do I feel? What do I need? Again, that is not going to change these strong drives.
Okay.
You have to be able to process your emotions in the brain-friendly way. The brain just loves to process emotions in a particular way, and this is just a tool. And as you process them, the brain just opens up like a flower and says, oh, the reason you're overeating is you get your safety from feeling stuffed. Wow, I can see myself then. And right when I'm stressed like that, the circuit, just imagine that there's a circuit. It's a string of neurons all stuck together, and they're just frozen together. They're really strong because the brain wants to remember what you did before when you were stressed. It's not going to let go of that memory. But when you're stressed, let's say you have a craving, or let's say you're stressed about something else, and all of a sudden you start using these emotional tools. What happens is you quickly get rid of the stress, you keep your thinking brain online, and you unlock that circuit. It's open for 3 to 6 hours. Okay? And during that time, the neurons that are all stuck together, they start getting fluid. The synaptic connections become fluid. And so you are the boss at that point. Whatever experience you feed to that brain, if you say, I cannot get my love from sugar, that's ridiculous. I can't get my love from sugar. I can get my love from, and you have to have something better to go for. The brain wants you to be in joy. And so if your fake joy is going for food because you have a faulty message, this is of note. It can be one occasion when you're highly stressed and you reach for food, and then it goes underground into the brain, and it's going to stay there potentially for the rest of your life. So part of discovering what that message is that's so rewarding is you can see yourself. Like when I discovered that my food circuit was I get my love from sugar, and I realized why I would stay up at night and make fluffy tapioca pudding when I was alone on a Friday night. It made sense to me that I could, I became a nutritionist before I was a health psychologist, and I was going to control my food and the food issues of other people by understanding nutrition. Well, once you get rid of this circuit in your brain that's telling you to overeat, then it's fun to know about nutrition. But we know from science that in fact a wide range of kinds of healthy ways of eating that are flexible, you still need to have food you enjoy, are going to work for you once you don't have that circuit in the brain, because that circuit of overeating creates so much stress that essentially that triangle starts going and you can't figure out. It's very popular now to do mindful eating and positive self-talk and such. These are really great methods, and they work when you're in low stress and the thinking brain is really on. They work great. And part of the problem with these methods is that they work great when you don't need them.
Okay. So what I hear you saying is that the tools that we're used to using,
yes,
have a function that is beneficial, but it's all on the upper brain, and we're trying to get beneath that. Are we talking conscious and subconscious brain here?
Exactly.
When you say thinking brain and emotional brain.
The conscious mind, be like, for example, consciously being mindfully aware of your food, a good thing. Knowing that you're probably going to have less, cravings if you eat healthy foods compared to a bunch of, processed foods. These are really important insights. But this is where the treachery comes. If you don't combine that with emotional brain training so that you get at these circuits down here, you are going to be have an illusion of control. You're going to have a sense that you've really knocked it out of the park. You know how to deal with your food. And you do when you're in low stress. Okay? But they now have plenty of studies, and one particularly great study from NYU showed that all these methods work great when you're in low stress in the top of the brain. The conscious mind's in charge. When stress comes, the conscious part of the brain goes offline, and you essentially let the bottom part of the brain control us, even if you don't want to.
Basically, you get hijacked by your emotions when you're in a stress state.
Your stressed emotion circuits own you.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's interesting is these levels of stress have amnesia. So if I'm in low stress and my thinking brain's in charge, I'm going to think I'm all set, right? And then when this part of the brain gets activated, the reptilian brain gets activated, I'm going to say, what's going on? Am I a nutcase or something? Or why I have no control over myself? What's wrong with me? I start judging myself. I don't feel worthy. I feel powerless. I feel ashamed. I don't want anyone to know that I'm eating like this. And all of a sudden, guess what happens? When these circuits shut off, we have an amnesia again. And we're back to this thinking brain being in charge. And we really tell ourselves we'll never have to be there again. So we don't take care of these circuits down here. This is what I'm saying. In order to really lose weight and keep it off, to not just eat healthy, but to have freedom from cravings, to connect with the deepest part of yourself and get your love, comfort, safety, pleasure from deep inside of you, so you don't need these foods and all their substitutes, whether it's internet shopping, one of my favorite, or whatever it is. You first deal with the emotional circuits and learn how to shut them off. And then you can do all the other things. They work great. But in the meantime, if you go down and don't deal with the circuits at the bottom of your brain, and they're pretty easy to shut off, then what happens is shame sets in, numbness sets in. I'm just not going to deal with my food. I'm not going to deal with my body size. I'm not going to deal with these health problems, because whenever I try to do it, it fails. And I will not allow myself to fail again. So this is for anyone who has judged themselves, who has said, there's no way that I'll go on another diet, or they go on another diet. I mean, right now people are doing keto or whatever. That's fine, nothing wrong, because the keto diet actually decreases stress. So you're up here in your thinking brain, but as soon as your dog dies, or your child leaves home, or you have a fight with a good friend, or just what happened to me is a very close friend passed away last week. She was 98, Priscilla, but I loved her with all my heart. These normal stresses that everyone has in a great life, that's enough to trigger the food circuit, and then off we go again. And then, I was talking to a person from my high school. There was a big reunion, and she said to me, her name was Leslie, and she says, Laurel, I've lost hundreds of pounds and I lose weight and I really feel like I'm so proud of myself. And then some little thing goes off in my brain. The wire goes, all of a sudden I'm overeating again and I can't control it. And then I feel so ashamed of myself. That's the main problem, that when we don't rewire that faulty circuit that was placed there through no fault of our own, the real needs we have for safety, love, comfort, and pleasure, we're going to food for them. And we go to food for them, they don't work, so we've got to eat more and more and more. But more importantly, we're not exhaling and say, I really do need to feel safe in a way that works. And I really do need to feel love in a way that satisfies me. So our fundamental needs in life, we don't move forward with because we're stuck on the food and the weight. No more.
It's interesting. I don't know that a lot of people might be emotionally aware enough to recognize it's one of those 4 kind of key fundamental needs. So how would they begin to identify whether it is, you said, love, comfort, safety, or pleasure? How does someone identify that? Like
Great.
you said, food is pleasurable,
yeah.
but there may be an underlying reason that they're eating. How do we know that?
What you do is you say, this is an emotional stress circuit problem. When I'm not stressed, I can't find out what is the message in that circuit.
When you're not stressed.
When you're not stressed. When you feel fine, you can't. Analyzing is a waste of time. But what's so fascinating is, there's beauty to the emotional brain. This is a survival brain, and it's a loving brain. And it's a perfect brain.
Safety, right? It's trying to keep you.
It is. But what I'm saying is, the reason I wrote this book, The Stress Eating Solution, the reason I'm doing this is because it is so frightfully easy to change your emotional brain if you just have essentially one simple tool. And I'm going to show you how to use it if you want.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. So I want to say again that when you begin to think that there is no hope, that you've been left out, that everybody else can control their lives except for you, and you're hopelessly flawed, take a big deep breath and say, I don't think that's true. I believe in myself. I know that there must be a way that's really simple. And I'm going to show you how to do it right now.
Okay.
Okay?
All
Okay.
right.
So what you have to do, and this is why EBT is unique, it's the only method that allows you to be conscious with your thinking brain, dip down and actually activate a circuit. You can even activate a circuit by thinking about overeating because it brings up so much guilt and stress and such. Quickly express anger. Anger, women have been told over and over again, I went through divorce. And I remember my ex-husband said something to me that he thought would slay me. Because he had, something had happened and he had acquired some money that was mine, and I was angry. And I'd saved some money before our marriage. And he had the ultimate cut a man can give a woman, is what he said to me. He says, well, Laurel, no one's seen you with your anger. Okay. Now, that was supposed to be a cut. And at that time, I didn't know better. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't own your anger and know how to process it, you will be depressed, worried constantly, anxious, ashamed, numb, or on a manic high. Okay, that's what happens. The problem with anger is you need it because it quickly reduces the stress so your thinking brain can stay online and you can feel your feelings. You've got to feel your feelings. And then once you are online and you felt your feelings, this reality just comes to you. And it's not the conscious one. Oftentimes it's very different than the conscious ones. It's the unconscious one. And I'm going to show you how to do it right now.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to what you have to do is everything we've told women that we can't do. Number one, you need to complain. You need to be really, really angry, and then stop and slowly feel your feelings. Fear and sadness and guilt. And once you feel that, you're going to support yourself. You're going to say, well, of course I would do that because this wire in my brain is telling me this. Of course I would do this because my unreasonable expectation in my brain is telling me this, and it will appear to you magically. Okay, so shall I do it?
Yeah.
Okay, so first I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to show you doing it. Okay. So the first is there's an app that helps you do it. Essentially, you start with these lead-ins. You say this lead-ins with your thinking brain. That's all it does. And then you finish, you wait, you pause until something comes up from your emotional brain. And that's good as gold. Each time you say the lead-in, pause, trust yourself, your inherent strength, goodness, and wisdom, and wait for something to bubble up. Okay? And the sentence I'm going to say is, the situation is, complain. What I'm most stressed about is, complain about what really bothers you. We want to get down to the most stressed place. 3 big angers, or 4 or 5 until you're really angry. I don't want to scare you because essentially anger is not safe. If you only express anger, it will get frozen and stuck into hostility. In this tool of EBT, it melts the anger and turns it into tender sadness, true fear about what's really going on, guilt, which is not shame. It's just, I have some power here, what I'm going to do. So the anger is a protest against being hurt, but it's very safe because it's in this tool. It's embedded in this tool. So I'm just going to go back to my circuit that I have. Is it okay if I use my own circuit?
Yes, that would be perfect.
Okay. So the situation is, and this is me after I had become a nutritionist and was still overeating and still, I think at one point I gained 40 pounds when I was just stuffing myself with cookies and what I really like, which is cheddar cheese and crackers. Okay. So I would say, okay, the first thing I'm going to do, the situation is, I'm going to wait. Situation is, I am completely out of control of my food. I say I'm going to eat a certain way. I do it for a while, and then all of a sudden I just lose it. And I don't even care what I should eat. I don't even care. I just know I'm going to get that ice cream or whatever it is. Okay, so I've complained, right? Okay, so I'm activating that circuit. What I'm most stressed about is I'm completely out of control of my eating. Just now, go stop. And now, pow, I'm going to get anger going. I feel angry that I can't control myself. I can't stand it that I keep overeating, even though I tell myself I'm not. I know what to do, and I just don't do it over and over again. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. In that moment, circuit unlocks, and I know it so that those synaptic connections are now fluid, and I can control them. And my mind shuts off, and I start to feel sad. And now I slow it way down. Because if I can feel my feelings that are in my unconscious mind, I know myself and I can heal. I feel sad that I'm out of control. And then you feel it. You don't rush it. You feel it. And it's the feeling of it that melts the circuit. It stops the craving. I feel afraid that I'm going to go to my deathbed still overeating and being out of control of my food. Stop. I'm feeling it course through my body. It's treating my whole brain and my whole body. I feel guilt now. Guilt is not shame. It's now I have to look at my power. I have to say, what could I have done different? What's my part of this? Without any shame at all. Just saying, hey, come on. What's going on here? What could I do differently? I feel guilty that I am still out of control of my eating. I hate that. Okay, and then you have love. Remember, it's love that heals. Self-love is the basis for emotional brain training. Self-love. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to use a gentle tone. The vocal tone is very important. We have to use a very nurturing inner voice. Of course, I'm completely out of control of my eating because my unreasonable expectation that got stored in my brain is I get my, and wait for something to bubble up, safety, love, power, security, comfort, whatever that is that bubbles up, you wait. And for me, it was love from, now interestingly, these are all addiction circuits. We get addicted to these things. So that drive, that fight or flight drive that creates such a chemical effect that's addictive. It's addictive biologically. It's not addiction as in addiction. It's just we are going to move toward that particular source of safety or pleasure or whatever until we rewire that circuit. I get my love from tasting sweet food in my mouth and swallowing it. Or whatever bubbles up. It could be from feeling stuffed in my stomach, from eating sugar, from stuffing myself, from having whatever I want to eat whenever I want to eat it. Everyone's different, but the words bubble up from this brain to your neocortex, and you're practically home free. Number one, just the secure connection or attachment to yourself of knowing what's going on, your whole body relaxes. And that triangle of brain organs and structures that cause all those chemicals to start going like this and make us eat more and essentially store that weight and feel lethargic and depressed, that shuts off. And in that moment, you look at the ice cream and you say, I'm not sure I need it. And then you continue to actually switch the message. The first, I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. The first thing, you must go very slowly because the reptilian brain is really ticked off. And it's saying, listen, I've been using food for 25 years. I don't like change. So I'm not going to let you change this. And so we fight back we outsmart the reptile by going very slowly. So I'm going to just give you a demonstration. You first have to negate it. I cannot get love from eating sugar. I mean, sugar in my mouth and eating it. I'll just say sugar. I cannot, because the reptilian brain's really ticked right now. If it gets too stressed, the whole brain shuts down. Don't want that to happen. I'm conscious now. I cannot get my love from sugar. Even if I ate sugar all day and all night, all day long, every single day, it would not give me the love that I need. It would not give me the love I need. And then you start to make fun of the circuit. Because shame is so damaging to all of us, we essentially keep from feeling ashamed by making fun of the circuit. Say, that's ridiculous. I can't get love from eating sugar. I can't get it. It's just never going to work. Even if I ate all day and all night, it wouldn't do it. I can get love from, and then this is why rewiring circuits with EBT is developmental. Because you can't let go of the food until you actually meet your true need. And so what we do is guide you in saying, go to your body. It's going to bubble up. Essentially, we experience our emotional brain in our body. So just connect with your body and say to yourself, I can get my love from connecting to the deepest part of me. Connecting to the deepest part of me in this very moment and celebrating that I am alive and I have that connection to the love that's inside of me. Wahoo! Okay? So in those few minutes, you now have moved from self-judgment, fighting against food, when food is not the problem. The food, it's a symptom of the wire. And now you can say, hey, this EBT stuff, it might even work. And that is progress. And then you begin to rewire those circuits.
It's an incredible thing, the brain. You know, these things that we have learned about the plasticity of the brain, the changeability, the ability to take a neuron path, and it's a rut in your brain, right? That's what you're talking about. These are the ruts. Yeah. We don't even think about them. They're so automatic. Yeah,
exactly.
And most of us, I would say, have been digging that rut for years.
Yes. So the beauty of, remember that the emotional brain is the seat of the soul. And the mysteries of life are in our emotional brain. Essentially, if we didn't have an emotional brain, a limbic system, we'd just be like a snake. We'd have beady eyes. It's the emotional brain that makes us human and loving and purposeful and have magical moments of joy in our life. And so one of the things that's really important to know is that the brain does not want you to be in pain, because what it wants you to do is move through stress back to joy. Because in joy, your health is best, you can live a purposeful life, you have all this energy and creativity to do other things. It doesn't want you to be stuck in stress. It doesn't want you to have these circuits, but they're there and they're real. And so if we don't rewire them, these circuits make us suffer.
I have a question for you on this
Yes.
topic. So I did an incredible interview with a woman who did research on addiction and sugar.
Yes.
And super fascinating. The book is really interesting because she worked in an addiction center. She realized that diet was actually, she added that component into her treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And the shift in diet actually gave these people results that keep them off of their drug and alcohol.
Yeah. So let me speak to that.
The sugar is actually an addictive thing so in addition to the emotion, where does sugar come in?
It comes in two places. Number one, like you said, you have to make peace with food because you have to eat.
Yes.
So rewire your food circuit. Secondly, food is highly addictive.
Yes.
If you have a big candy bar one day, the next day you're going to be having a craving at that time.
It's so true.
So that's one of the reasons I don't eat so much sugar, because I don't really want to have addictive stuff in my body. I'll still have it if I want it, but I don't have it as much, and the circuit's gone, so it's not a problem. There's even something even worse. The reason that this helped this woman was not because of neuroplasticity. In this addiction clinic, the reason that changing diet was helpful is it reduced metabolic stress. Okay, so essentially, if you change your diet, in fact, half of health problems, and the three major killers in adults are diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. These killers, 50% is lifestyle. But the problem is, if your brain is in stress, you can't have a healthy lifestyle. You'll tend to either oversleep or undersleep, undereat, overeat, underexercise, overexercise. That's why we go for the circuits. However, lifestyle is extremely important in decreasing stress. We just say in the 30-day solution in this book, you start off with learning how to get from stress to joy in 2 to 4 minutes. You learn these pathways in your brain with an app. And then secondly, you rewire your food circuit, you rewire the mood that triggers you, you rewire the pattern in relationships that make you stressed out, either merging or distancing, and you rewire your relationship with your body. So there's 4 of these circuits that are really necessary. And then in the meantime, you start eating healthy. When the stress is lower, you start sleeping more, you exercise moderately. So it's very important. So essentially what she was doing that was great is identifying that a diet is actually, when you eat unhealthy, you essentially are creating stress in your brain and in your body. What we do with a stress eating solution is you start by getting rid of the circuits, being able to shut those circuits off and rewire them. And after you've done that, you're going to want to eat healthy. And so you get the added benefit of a healthy lifestyle, but don't go against the grain of these fight or flight drives to want to overeat. Shut off those drives. It's really not hard to do. You just need a missing emotional tool that we want everyone in America to have. We want everyone in the United States and worldwide, because essentially obesity is a global epidemic, to take a nice deep breath and say, yes, all this sugar isn't good for me, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewire the drive in my brain so it's easier to release that habit pattern and begin to have not only more joy in my life, but freedom from rigid dieting and freedom from that drive to overeat.
So you're basically shifting the attention from the food, the sugar,
yes,
thing, and you're going back, and like you said, it's a biological wiring. So, okay, I find myself addicted to sugar. I'm eating a bunch of sugar. I can't stop.
Yes.
That's my awareness.
Right.
Instead of guilting myself, throwing everything away, binging, purging, whatever it is that people do, going through the shame and the guilt and the negative self-talk. we
Yes.
can use that as a, hey, there's something here that's happening. I'm going to shift
Yes.
my attention from the sugar to what I'm feeling.
Right, exactly. And what you're doing with self-love, because self-love is the basis for the connection inside, and trust in the beauty of our genetics. We have a beautiful brain. We have a beautiful body. The gift of life is amazing. And to say, gosh, I feel terrible. I feel horrible. This sugar addiction or this weight is making me so miserable. And then you take a nice deep breath and you put a big smile on your face and you say, how perfect. My brain is going to continue to make me absolutely miserable because it's saying to me, hey, I want to get your attention. And if you feel miserable enough, you're going to actually say, okay, I'm going to stop doing all these things that don't work. I'm actually going to fall in love with myself again, realize it's in the emotional brain, and I can use emotional tools to shut off that wire and stop the suffering.
And suffering is a very powerful way of describing it, because I personally know people that do suffer because they've yo-yoed heavily or lost a whole lot of weight and didn't know how to emotionally cope. I think they didn't know how to emotionally cope with the attention. So they gained it all back.
Right. And that's why, truly speaking, to lose weight and keep it off, you need to do your food circuit, which is in this book. The mood circuit either triggers it. It can be like I'm anxious or upset, or it could be that I want to go numb. And then the shame afterwards, the shame after eating. It can be one mood before. Maybe it's like with me, depression, during, felt numb, and afterwards I could feel the shame. We get very attached to these emotions. Okay. So you rewire your attachment or the addiction to those emotions. For women, particularly relationships, even if they're a little off, even if we people please a little bit too much, or we distance a little bit too much, we lose out on something really important, which is oxytocin.
Okay.
If we don't get the oxytocin burst, which is the number one way to stop appetites, the chemical that stops the appetite is when you get that love chemical going. It's not that you don't love the person, but if you're giving too much or you're backing away too much, you're not going to get that chemical burst. You got to do that. But also women judge their bodies. I mean, the whole world tells us we have to have a perfect body. And as long as there's not love of our bodies, that we are going to have that self-judgment, and it's getting in the way of our self-love. But also, when you gain weight, the body also says, okay, I get my safety from being this size. I had that happen to me. My partner is a little on the chunky side. Okay, I was single for many years, and 6 years ago I just got lucky and met this great guy, and we've been together ever since. His name is Walt. Isn't that a great name? His name is Walt, sweetheart, and he's a little chunky, right? So after the in-love phase of our relationship, I noticed I was gaining weight. I mean, it wasn't just the chocolate I was eating during that in-love phase, but I wasn't just losing it like I normally would lose 5 or 10 pounds or whatever it was. And I thought, I bet you I have a body circuit. Walt's chunky, so I get my safety from being chunky like Walt. And these are all in the unconscious mind. So I went back to, I'm going to clean up that body circuit. I did it, and then the weight came off. So there are 4 major circuits, but I want you to know that when you feel really bad about the weight, do not go into shame. Go into awareness of the goodness of life, that this hurt that you're having now is drawing your attention to go to the root cause of the problem, which is not your fault. It is just a circuit. And until 10 years ago, I told you I've worked on this for 40 years. It wasn't until 10 years ago that the neuroscience said these emotional circuits in the unconscious mind that control our response to stress are the root cause of anxiety, depression, and up to 90% of health problems. Wow. They're among the most plastic circuits in the brain, but you can't think your way out of them. You use simple emotional tools when you're stressed, and the circuit begins to shift, and you feel that connection of well-being again.
Mm. So when you're feeling bad about your weight,
yes,
that is when you can utilize that emotion instead of destroying yourself or sabotaging yourself. You can actually tap into that emotion and get present with it.
What you want to do is essentially develop, all about this method is fun. It's got to be fun because the emotional brain likes to have a good time. So my suggestion is you create a song for yourself, and that you create it before you need it. You just, sometimes when you're feeling really good about yourself, you're saying, my song is, it's not me, it's just a wire, and I'm going to rewire it. Okay, it's not me, it's not my fault, it's just a wire, and the fact that I feel so bad right now is giving me just the motivation I need to go into my beautiful emotional brain and learn how to clear those circuits for weight, for food, for mood, for whatever it is, because it's all about these circuits. And that's what we now have an initiative, which is called Brain-Based Health, and our app is Brain-Based Health, because essentially we know that if you use your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain, not just to be mindfully aware or to analyze things, but to tune in to the circuits in your emotional brain. And when there's a circuit that's buzzing around there, that you shut it off, the chemicals and electricity in every cell of your body improve. And we can't be completely reliant on medications, procedures, and devices, because there's going to be rationing, as you well know. And because the medications are helping us somewhat, but they're not getting at the root cause. And so the joy is to say, the root cause is inside me. If I learn how to tune in to the stress in my brain and process the emotions and shift those circuits, I can have a level of chemical fix that's natural, that's endogenous, and that can't be in a bottle. Only I can give it to myself. And that's called brain-based health. It's a new medical care. That's where within 10 years, emotional brain training and training the brain for resilience is going to be the backbone of healthcare, because it gives us the chemical shift and the boost and the power that we can't get from traditional medicines. We still need medications, procedures, and devices, but fundamentally, we need to be able to connect deeply with ourselves and essentially move from stress to joy and honor the resiliency, the natural resiliency of our emotional brain. That's part of the genome, and it's part of the gift of life.
So fundamentally, and I've always believed this, we are actually wired to heal and be healthy. It's the habits and the dysfunctional wiring that causes the dis-ease or the lack of health that we're experiencing.
Exactly. So essentially, there's a resiliency pathway in our brain that's down here that goes from the bottom part of our brain being in charge. We have to process our emotions effectively, and we move right up to the neocortex is in charge, and we feel that glow. And that glow, worked by Antonio Damasio and others in neuroscience, shows that state of joy or neural integration is associated with secure attachment, overall well-being, and optimal chemistry. So every time you move from stress to joy, you don't want to be one of those people who's a joy junkie. Okay, if you have to do everything perfectly so you're always in a state of joy, that's very bad for your brain. What's cleansing to your brain is go out in the world and do things that scare you. Do things that challenge you, where you learn, change, and grow. And it's going to send you down to a more stressed state. And you have the emotional tools. You're in that stress state, and that's where you're creative. You have new ideas because you're breaking up old ideas, and you move from stress to joy. And that resiliency pathway in your brain gets stronger like a rut. And your set point in your brain moves from being stuck in stress to being much more easily in joy. But for the rest of our lives, we need to be able to move from stress to joy. That's how we renew our brain and keep up to date with what's really going on in the world, because the world's always changing.
So that stress-joy cycle is actually like a healthier way for us to function. It's just kind of lean into the process.
Lean into it. Well, when you can get from stress to joy in 2 to 4 minutes, we just did a big study on EBT, and we had people see how long when they used the app, the Brain-Based Health app, they used the app, and how long did it take them? It was 1.5 minutes to 2.5 minutes, and they went from a stressed out state to joy, and they were moving forward with purpose and clarity, and they were collecting what we call a joy point. You collect joy points in this method. And so they said, wow, it only takes 2.5 minutes, and there's an app to do it. I think this is a good way to live. I know many doctors, because I'm a professor at UCSF. I'm a health psychologist, but most of my friends are physicians. And, if you live in a life where you're protected, or where you create that protection by creating the perfect lifestyle, not a good thing. Because what happens is life is not like that. The circuits at the bottom of your brain are always beginning to be out of date, because the world's changing. These are basic expectations of life. You've got to get that rejuvenation, that renewal. You get stressed, you go down to a stress state, and you spiral up, and you renew your emotional architecture in your brain. So this whole pressure to have everything as possible, what happens is you start suppressing your emotions. And you stop allowing yourself to surrender to, wow, I feel really bad, but now I'm going to feel really great because I'm processing my emotions. So be emotionally free. Learn these tools. There's essentially one major tool called the cycle tool that you can learn to use different ways. We want every child to learn this tool. We want every older person. I said that I just buried someone close to me who was 98. We want everyone throughout their lifespan, particularly in middle age. Now, in middle age, there's a lot of pressure on people. They are, they're getting older. It's time limited. There's so many, they're taking care of their parents, they're taking care of their kids, their marriage may not be going too well. I mean, there's so much going on in their career. I mean, who knows what's going on with careers? There's so much stress. This is the time where you embrace your stress. You get the full set of emotional tools to strengthen your resiliency pathway. And one way of doing it is identify a problem like stress eating and fix it. Or identify another problem like technology addiction or a relationship issue. They all use the same resiliency pathway. So if you learn that pathway for one problem, you can use it for anything. You're emotionally prepared for life.
Yes, that's powerful. So let me ask you, if you had to kind of give 3 gifts, because this has been a fantastically informational conversation, and I think there are a lot of ways that people's minds and emotions could go. If we could distill down 3 things that you really want them to start with, because obviously it's a process.
Yeah.
What would those 3 things be, Dr. Laurel? Because I think it's important that we kind of distill it down a little bit to make it a little bit more chewable, I suppose.
Yes. The first thing is that we've been told the problem is, the opportunity is the thinking brain. Thinking in stress just makes you ruminate, overanalyze, and get upset. Use your thinking brain to take charge of your emotional brain. Essentially, that if you do that one thing, focus on your body and how stressed you are, you're going to have a physiological effect that's going to benefit every cell of your body. Number one, use your thinking brain to be aware of your stress level. Number 2, anything that's feeling bad in you right now, when you feel bad, take it really seriously. Your brain wants you to feel great. So don't set aside your problems and say, well, I'm going to analyze that, or nobody has a perfect marriage, or whatever that is that's a problem in your life is a circuit. And even if it's a problem that you know is objective, let's say that you just lost your job. Losing a job can be one of the greatest things that happens to you, but losing a job is a stressor. And if you process that stress, you're going to learn, change, and grow and be an even more resilient person. If you stonewall, you'll have more stress symptoms, okay? So stress is good for you. Problems are good for you. And essentially, if you process your emotions and shut off that circuit, you're going to find that you are glad you had the problem because your joy quotient is much higher and you're emotionally evolving, not staying stuck. And last, that these circuits that get encoded in our brain that cause up to 90% of health problems, there's no source attribution. When they get activated, you have no body feel that you're actually being stressed. There's actually a circuit in there. They're completely stealth. So just assume whenever you have a problem that it's a circuit in your brain that was not encoded because it was your fault. You can't really tell when it's being activated, but it's there. And now we know with emotional plasticity that you can change those circuits.
It's so powerful. I love how we are not vilifying the emotional brain or the thinking brain. We're saying that they both have a function, and learning to bring them together to more of a wholeness is the way to go.
Precisely, Gina. You said it best. It's the whole brain approach. Use the thinking brain and appreciate it, and use it to take charge of that beautiful, beautiful, perfect emotional brain. And life begins to shine and shimmer in ways it never did before. That's
so incredible. Now, if somebody wanted to utilize this this program, how would they find these resources, Dr. Laurel?
It's EBT, emotional brain training, kind of like food stamps, except it's EBT, emotional brain training, ebt.org. We train health professionals in this method. There's online programs, there are apps, telegroups, and intensives. So you can get these tools with a lot of help. There's also an app called Brain-Based Health by EBT, and this is the best way to do it. There's also 2 books. One is The Stress Eating Solution. If you don't have stress eating as a problem, the other book is The Stress Overload Solution. We actually released these books on the same date because we wanted everybody to have the tools. And if you don't have a stress eating problem, you probably have a stress overload problem. So either way, you'll be able to rewire the circuits that block your joy and instead be able to celebrate that joy.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you again for saying yes and for sharing your passion with my tribe today. It's obvious that you're very passionate about what you do. You're knowledgeable and you have a desire to see people live healthier, more joyful lives. So thank you so much.
And thank you to you, Gina.
It's my pleasure. So today I've been talking to Dr. Laurel Mellin. She has 2 books, The Stress Eating Solution and The Stress Overload Solution. And her website is ebt.org. If you want to get access to any of these things of Dr. Mellin's, please head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 129. I will have hyperlinks there to everything that she shared today. And also while you're there, please leave your name and email address. I have a special gift for you. And as always, please subscribe to Feminine Roadmap wherever you're listening. It could be iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or Stitcher, because the more people that subscribe and follow, they rank us up higher and more women can find these life-changing conversations. And today we've learned that yes, you can change this dominant issue in your life, that we have a brain that's wonderfully and fearfully made. And when we partner with it, we can begin to live the lives that we dream of living, having the control, having the joy, having the ease. So please lean into this process. Go check out Dr. Laurel's resources. And as always, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy life to have a cup of something wonderful and join in on these conversations. I look forward to talking to you all again next week. Until then, my friends, take care. Bye-bye.